Waiters, what's the saddest time waiting for someone you have experienced? Got at a party of 15 to 20 inches for a woman's bridal shower. Her mom decorated the table and chairs and the whole corner for the party. Everyone in the restaurant could see there was going to be a party there on a busy Friday night. 4 people showed of the possible 20. That includes the future bride and mom. I didn't even care about the money I was missing out on. 4 tables of my section gone on a busy weekend shift. I just felt so bad for her. You know it's bad when you're not even worried about your tips. Ugh, this one was tough. I worked at a pretty fancy steakhouse in town, and we had a private dining room that could set up to 32 at a single, long table. To book the room we charge a $1,500 deposit, which we then use to cover part of the bill. It was a deposit, not a room charge. Anyways, this girl books it for 26 people, puts the deposit on her card. She shows up with her sister, and then after about 20 minutes, 2 of their friends show up and sit at the opposite end of this giant table from the birthday girl and her sister. Nobody else came. They waited an hour. The birthday girl was sobbing. The other 2 just awkwardly left. It was awful. I'm grateful to my manager, who in a moment of compassion refunded the whole deposit back onto the poor girl's card. I felt terrible for her. That's horrible. It must have meant so much to her since she is willing to splurge. I haven't bartended in a million years, but the saddest one was a guy in his 30s. He had a 2-top, asked for a bottle of top shelf champagne, candles lit, all that. Told me they were celebrating. No one showed. Guy looked morose, but had an appetizer. Poured a glass of champagne for the person who wasn't there, then asked for the bill. I felt bad, he obviously got stood up, so I brought him a dessert in the house. He smiled and told me it was his anniversary. My face must have showed my sadness for him, so he clarified his wife died of cancer a few months ago. It may have been the saddest thing I've seen. The guy's had something horrible happen to him and still decided to go out and attempt to remember the good times, not dwell on the bad. You were nice to him and that probably meant a lot. His day probably sucked, but it sucked less than it could have done. Not a waiter, but worked at a coffee shop for several years and made friends with tons of regulars. One of the regulars, we'll call him Jay, was working on his PhD in art history or something to that effect at the university near us. He came in one day, got his usual tea and asked if I could charge him for a latte, but make it later. No big deal. I was bussing tables and asked who the latte was for and very excitedly expressed that he was meeting a lady and it was kind of a date. He was an awkward kind of guy, but very interesting and incredibly friendly. 1 hour passes. No show. 2. No show. Finally 3. He's looking despondent and starts collecting his things and leaves. She showed up 20 minutes later asking about Jay. Apparently they got their times completely mixed up. He comes in the next day and I mentioned that she came in looking for him and he looked so excited. I found out a week or so later from him that she basically blew him off a second time. He was so crestfallen. It broke my heart. That one was almost going well, and then no. My poor heart. Not exactly a waiter, but I was working at a bar a few years back and there often was this girl, in her early 20s maybe, who sometimes used to meet her mother at the bar, maybe about every 2 or 3 months. The thing is, more often than not the mother either came extremely late, 1 or 2 hours at least, or didn't came at all. When she came, there often was a huge tension between the two. It was obvious that they had some unresolved issues. Watching the girl wait for hours even if it was clear that the mother wouldn't come on that day always broke my heart. As a barkeeper and since she was a regular, I tried my best to engage a conversation with her to distract her a little, but there's only so much you can do. Fun fact, years after I stopped working at that bar, I met her at a random party and we had a great evening night together. She told me that she broke up with her mother though. It sucks being the child and trying to resolve issues with your parents because you want them to be a part of your life, but then they refuse to do any work on their part. UGHHH. This gentleman in his mid-40s came to my restaurant frequently and would not order his drink until his wife got there. He would wait for a few minutes, then pull out a framed picture of a woman, set it on the table, and proceed to order his food and drink. He would talk to the framed picture and have dinner with her about once a week. I noticed him doing this often and told my co-worker I thought it was cute he was having dinner with his late wife, and she replied, "Oh, no, that's not his wife. He found that picture at Goodwill and has been in a relationship with it ever since. He told me that a long time ago. What did I expect from working right off the freeway in Cracktown?" Very true story, no lie. They had us in the first half, not gonna lie. I was actually a hostess at the time and I was asked to take the table for a server. An old man came in asking for a table of 6 and he asked for 6 waters. I set up his table and I put his order in. He said it was his birthday. He was there for about an hour or two and nobody showed up. It was really sad. He ended up tipping me like $30 and he said sorry for the trouble. I still think about that guy. I hope he's doing okay. Ugh. I have no idea why I clicked on this thread. It's just making me super depressed. I hope that man is doing okay too. Guy was dressed really nice. Says his date should be there soon and goes ahead and is seated. He orders a drink and 30 minutes pass by. Then an hour. And another drink later. He started fidgeting with something and I noticed it was a ring. After an hour and a half he asked for his check and muttered something about there goes 2 years wasted and down the drain. He tipped 2x's bill. Poor guy. Was working an evening shift and a relatively younger guy came in and waited for his date. She showed up and not even 10 minutes later he got up and left and she sat there crying. Patrons that are there to break up are also hard to witness. A woman came in 4 nights in a row just in case she got the day wrong. She'd sit at the bar wearing the same flowery dress every night and would hopefully look at the door every single time it opened. Left in tears the first 2 nights when we closed. The 3rd and 4th nights she just stared vacantly at the door until we had to make sure she left. I never saw her again. I don't think any other staff did either, but we all felt really bad for her. She got a couple free drinks and apps. We didn't even care if it was a scam cause she seemed so broken about it. A woman came in 4 nights in a row just in case she got the day wrong. I feel bad for her, but this is not normal behavior. I wonder if she's okay. I was a server for 5 years and the most heartbreaking experience I had was an older woman, probably in her 60s, was waiting for her grandson to come meet her for lunch. When I greeted her at the table she was very excited as I assumed she didn't see him much. As time went by no one showed up, so she decided to order. Towards the end of her meal no had shown up, so it being a slow shift, me and my GF, we worked together at the same restaurant, which is where we met. Decided to just talk with her for a little bit and give her some company. We both felt so sad for this sweet old lady, but we could tell that simple act of kindness made her day. Shame on that grandson. Anyone who stands up their own grandma is an ungrateful punk. Place I used to work at had a man come in every night for a week, wait for a few hours, order food and drinks, then leave with no one showing up. Later learned he was just trying to cope with his wife's death, believing that she'd arrived to greet him at the restaurant where they had their first date. In a strange and not so sad way, that location may have allowed him to feel close to her, and that was good enough. Not a waiter, but to cheer this thread up, I waited an hour and a half for my date to show once. I ended up sitting texting my friends. Fed up, but kept telling myself 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. Just as I was about to give up she showed. She explained she was a nurse on a mental health ward and one of her young people had gone into crisis. She'd been stressing the whole time. Anyway, we've been married 10 years in February. Sometimes it's worth the wait. I'm not a waiter, but I set up a joint party for my son and my nephew who have the same birthday. His stepmom decided not to bring him to his own party. The boys were born on the same day 3 years apart. I set up a pizza party with family and joined friends. His dad was working and the stepmom just decided not to bring him. Long before cell phones. Not the wait staff, but the waiter. I had set an OkCupid date at this nice coffee shop in Brooklyn. I get there, and I know the barista from college. I'm the only person in the shop at the time, so we talk a little, awkwardly. Gradually other customers arrive, so she attends to them and I attend to my phone. It gets to the point where my date is 20 minutes late and hasn't been responding to my messages asking about an ETA. I'm sweating profusely. I'm so embarrassed that I'm probably being stood up in front of someone who I had several classes with years prior and knows most of my friends. I feel so humiliated. Then my date walks in. stands there for a moment, and walks right back out the door. Barista, was that her? Me, yup. Barista, what in butthole? That comment made things slightly better. What, why, that's evil. Not a waiter, but was out with my girlfriend and we were seated next to a date. Guy was clearly trying to engage with the girl, but the girl kept looking at her phone disinterested. Guy initiated all the conversations, only to be met with one-word answers. He ordered a lot of food, it's a dessert place, so a lot of small meals, and then the girl suddenly took her bag and left. He banged the table after about paying, and just left with the food untouched. Everyone in the vicinity, including the waiters, were visibly shocked. I felt so bad for the guy. She sounds like an awful person.